Hi everyone, my name is Robin Kerber and I'm the Farm and Seed to School Coordinator with the Maine Department of Education Child Nutrition Program. And today I'm going to be running through part of our local foods training on Maine potatoes, and this is our educational presentation. So this local foods training has three parts. The first part, congratulations, you've already begun it. It's to watch this educational presentation in its entirety. And then step two is to download and use the Harvest of the Month potato recipes. And then step three is to actually use in your school kitchens local Maine potatoes and a couple of the recipes that we've shared with you, and to send me some photos or maybe even a video of you preparing those dishes in your school kitchens. And if you complete all three of these steps and you email me to let me know, your district will be added to the districts for this school year that are eligible to receive an additional $500 of reimbursement in the local foods fund. So it's important that you let me know once you've completed this training. So what are some of the expected outcomes and goals of this presentation? I always like to provide a little bit of a background, a little bit of context on these local ingredients, so we have a better understanding of how they fit into our Maine culture, why they find themselves in Maine soil, why they're being grown. And I think that this will only add value to your experience when you're using these local ingredients and then when your children are actually enjoying them themselves. So the goals of this presentation, we're going to get a better understanding of the local foods fund here in Maine, which is why we're doing this training. Written directly into that fund, it says that the Maine Department of Education will offer local foods trainings to allow schools to participate, learn more about local procurement, and receive the additional reimbursement as part of their local foods fund claims. We're going to learn about potatoes in Maine. We're going to check out a calendar to see when they're available, what kinds are available, because they truly are an amazing quintessential Maine ingredient that is almost available year round, which is really exciting. And we're going to talk about the Harvest of the Month material for potatoes. Potato month is January, and how to utilize some of the resources that we've created for Harvest of the Month. We're going to get a basic understanding of how potatoes can fit into our school meals. I'm going to go over some basic potato knife skills. We've also created a video to show these knife skills to you. We're going to learn about the different types of potatoes, different varieties, how to properly store them, and how to identify a good spud versus a bad one. All right, so the Local Foods Fund, formerly known as the Local Produce Fund, underwent some changes over the summer of 2021, including now you can buy local value-added dairy and local proteins. So it's no longer just local produce that you can buy, it's local Maine foods. And I did this little visual here so you can really see some of the differences, including that your district is now eligible for $5,000 or $5,500 if you participate in a local foods training per school year per district. So you can see that that's a significant increase from what it was when it was the local produce fund, which is awesome. Like I said, we've added the value-added dairy and the protein. You can now purchase local ingredients from your distributors, not just directly from a farmer. And then the definition of minimally processed has changed a little bit too. So if you have any questions, if you're looking through your Cisco catalog or Native Maine, or maybe you're talking to a local farmer, you're not quite sure if what you want to buy will qualify for that reimbursement, just give me a call, send me an email, and we can figure it out together. But remember, for every $3 that you spend on local food, if it meets the criteria, you receive $1 back. So that means if you're going to receive $5,000 back this school year, you have to spend $15,000 in the school year. But hopefully this helps kind of ease a little bit of the burden of sometimes buying local ingredients is a little bit more expensive, but not always. Potatoes are an example of when buying local can actually be the way more affordable option, because they're just not being shipped across the country. Chances are they're coming from Western Maine or up in Aroostook County, so you're not paying for all of that fuel. Yeah. All right, so here's another calendar that shows, of course, the months here and how they correlate with the status of the Maine potato. So starting in January, like I said, that is Maine Potato Month with Harvest of the Month. We feature it in January, though, as you know, it is not harvested in January. In the winter months, we like to focus on the storage crops, the protein, the dairy, and really in those peak harvest months in the summer and the fall, focusing on the ingredients that don't last as long in our pantries. So potatoes are planted in the spring. You know, it depends on weather and what's going on with the rain, the snow, but usually April or May, those spuds are going into the ground. And then by July, some farmers are harvesting what we call new potatoes, which are basically the young tender potatoes. And then in September and October, the majority of them are harvested. Up in Aroostook County, they still have their harvest break, which depending on what district you go to is anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks of a break in the school year, where families traditionally would go off and it was all hands on deck. Everybody's out in the fields harvesting those potatoes. So potatoes are a quintessential Maine crop and are deeply, deeply ingrained in our food history. I love these photos here of these gals harvesting potatoes. They look like they're maybe going to church afterwards. They look so sweet and they're out there in the fields with their boots on. But yeah, and then once they're harvested, potatoes, if they're stored in the right conditions, can last through the winter. So they really are a great local ingredient. They're such a blank canvas as far as their flavor and their texture. You can do so much with them, and they really should be showing up in all of our school kitchens. And the three main potato varieties that we have with our Harvest of the Month material, these beautiful graphics, are the Caribou Russet, the Huckleberry Blue, and the Kennebec. But we'll get into it a little bit later that there truly are thousands of varieties of potatoes. These are just some that grow really well here in Maine. All right, and hopefully some of this material looks familiar to you because your school is participating in Harvest of the Month. And if they're not participating in Harvest of the Month, definitely encourage you to pledge. We mail you material, we support you in trying to source these local ingredients, and we provide you with this really great promotional and educational material, including a few new items this year, which I'm going to talk about. But starting in the top left corner, we have our meal pattern tray poster, kind of a fill in the blank canvas. We've got our beautiful monthly posters. We've got our fact sheet with a couple of recipes. We've created more recipes that are available for download on our website. And we made them in school yields, which would be about 50 servings. And then we also did the same recipes in for home yields, so 6 to 8 servings. And the idea here is that the Harvest of the Month message and these recipes can be at home too. And if kids are eating these meals, trying these foods at home with their family, then they see them in school on their meal trays, maybe they're more likely to give it a go because it's something that they're now familiar with. And then we have our stickers, which are available for by request only. So we're not just assuming that you want them this year. We're not just mailing them to everybody, but we definitely have them. So if you still want to use them for fun games or to slap on the side of your parfaits or your grab and go items, just fill out a form online and we'll definitely mail those out to you. And then we have our new Harvest of the Month source cards, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later too, how to use those. And then lastly, we have our beautiful social media graphics that are included for download in our monthly Harvest of the Month newsletter. So make sure that every month I try and mail it out by the first week. You are opening it up and you're checking out those resources because some of these are only available for download online. So unless you're opening up those newsletters, you're going to miss them. All right, and how to use the source card. So this is a really great one that we, I think I saw this in RSU3 when I visited their school one time, and they were serving a local shepherd's pie with local beef and local mashed potatoes and carrots. And right there on the hotline in the cafeteria, they had these little pretty index cards that said, you know, where the ingredients were coming from, and it really highlighted that that was a local product for the kids to have. So that adds a lot of value to your offerings. And, you know, here I just filled it out. The harvest of the month ingredient is russet potatoes sourced from Stone Cipher Farm in Bodenham, Maine. So this is just going to add a lot of value to that meal, and it's a way to better connect the farmer with the food that the kids are going to be eating. And you can laminate these and use a dry erase marker, use them over and over again. You can photocopy them, do it that way. We mail out, a few every month for you, but definitely get creative because it'd be great for you to be able to reuse these over and over again. So they are on a hardier cardstock paper. And then the school meal tray poster. So this is a fun one. Really, the sky's the limit with your creativity and how you want to use it. But it's a pretty big printed poster. And the idea here is that you will show clearly where the student is going to find that local ingredient, that local part of their meal right on the tray. So you can write in, local baked potato with the fixings, and then maybe there's an artist in your kitchen. He or she can draw on what part of the meal is the local ingredient, or you can print and paste on right onto the meal tray. But this is just kind of another way of showing, hey, look, when you're looking down at your meal tray, you're going to see your milk, you're going to see your apple, and then you're going to see this baked potato, and that's the local ingredient. Just a way to highlight it. All right, so moving on to the nitty-gritty of the potato. This morning when I was wrapping up this presentation, I put into Google, what are potatoes, which I think was kind of made me chuckle. I had no idea what sort of answers I was going to be getting, but it was just such a kind of a funny question to throw out there. But I realized I didn't have a good answer when I thought about it myself. This is an ingredient that is found in so many items, but like, where does it come from? Why does it grow so well in Maine? I didn't have a very good basic understanding. So potatoes, quite simply, are the tuber that changed the world. Originally domesticated by indigenous people of the Andean highlands and brought back across the Atlantic by Spanish colonizers in the 16th century, many researchers argue that the humble potato contributed to the rise of modern forms of agriculture in Europe. Today, it's the world's 5th largest staple crop. For our part, potatoes are far and away America's most consumed produce item. We eat nearly 50 pounds per person each year. And unsurprisingly, tomatoes take the number 2 spot, because what are French fries without ketchup? So potatoes are a tuber, not the same as a root vegetable like a radish, that come in a vast variety of sizes, colors, shapes, and textures. And this photo here, as we just learned, potatoes are native to South America. And these are some of the original heirloom varieties. And you might look at them and say, yeah, those were potatoes, but what's wrong with them? Or like, are they supposed to look like that? And we have just, over thousands of years, adapted the potatoes, selected certain varieties, until we ultimately prefer the big, starchy, white, uniform shaped potatoes, like think of a russet potato, because they're easy to peel, we have more yield, but there's so many flavors and varieties and textures that come from the potato if we're able to source some of these more unique varieties. And we're so lucky to live in a state like Maine, where we have farmers that truly care about different varieties of food and are growing so many of them. Potato nutrients. So potatoes contain many essential nutrients, including potassium. A medium potato with a skin provides 620 milligrams of potassium. In fact, it's considered one of the most potassium-rich foods available, as one serving of potatoes provides 18% of the daily recommended amount. Vitamin C. You may think of orange juice when it comes to vitamin C, but it's time to rethink. Potatoes have 45% of your daily recommended. That's incredible. I had no idea they had that much vitamin C. I think sometimes people think of potatoes as being, not a lot of nutrients, or kind of just like this starchy carbohydrate on your plate. But man, 45% of vitamin C is awesome. Fiber. A medium potato has 2 grams of fiber, representing 8% of your daily recommended amount. Vitamin B6, a medium potato offers 10% of the daily recommended amount of vitamin B6. Iron, with only 6% of the daily recommended amount of iron, potatoes are not known for their iron content, but it's a contributing nutrient, so it keeps you healthy, and every little bit counts. Antioxidants. Potatoes contain phytochemicals like carotenoids that help protect cells in your body from damage. And of course, keep in mind that the skin of the potato is just as healthy as the flesh of the potato. The skin contains half the fiber, but most of the nutrients are in the flesh. Okay, so if you're going to be removing the skin, you're going to be removing a lot of that fiber, but a lot of the nutrients are still in the flesh. So you're not really going to be losing out on too much. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about my thoughts on the skin of a potato when we get to those slides, which I guess is this slide. So to peel or not to peel the potato, I say if it's organic, I typically don't peel it. I'm always going to give it a really good wash because that potato is growing in the dirt. There's all sorts of bacteria, microorganisms in soil that we don't want to be eating. So thoroughly wash and scrub your potatoes. But as a good rule of thumb, you want to peel it. So I always think about the skin, the flesh as being kind of the natural protective barrier of a plant, just like it's the natural protective barrier on our bodies. It keeps out bad, harmful things. So for a potato, that skin is going to keep away any kind of things we don't want in the soil from getting to the flesh. So why not peel it off and know that what's left underneath the skin is really what we want to be eating. So peel it, compost those skins. They're great for compost piles. And another thing I love about potatoes is when we talk about the yield of an item, potatoes have almost 100%. And if you're not throwing away those skins, they have 100%. And what that means is that you are eating the part of the potato that will be consumed is almost the entire thing. So you think of like an apple, and maybe you're peeling the apple, you're definitely coring it, you're definitely taking out the seeds, and you're maybe going to get like an 80% yield. Or some kinds of winter squash, you're peeling, you're taking out all those seeds, you have a lot of waste that's going into the compost, maybe it's like a 60% yield, but the potato is almost entirely edible. You're not throwing away much at all. And if you are going to prep a bunch of them ahead of time, you can simply soak them in water with a little bit of lemon juice or vinegar overnight in the fridge, and then cook them up the next day. This just prevents oxidizing and maintains the quality of the potato. And then I like this photo here of the different knife cuts. There's some fancy French words to describe basically French fries and matchsticks is what I would call them, and then the different dices. And I laughed when I came across this picture online because it reminded me of the very first culinary class that I took. I went to culinary college after high school, and it was a basic knife skills class. And I remember the first day, we were all really scared. We were all there in our chef white uniforms with our tall hats, and we had this really intense French chef instructor, and he gave us all a large russet potato and told us to cut all of these different cuts with that one potato. And so we all, meticulously cut to the best of our abilities. And then he walked around with a ruler and measured all of our knife cuts and critiqued us in front of everybody. And it was kind of intense, but we all did really learn the value of knife skills. And you're going to find all different kinds of knife cuts and recipes. So just kind of become familiar with what's the difference between a large dice versus a small dice and how that's going to affect the recipe. And then there's also two tools here that I wanted to show that really help with potatoes. The classic mandolin in the bottom right, great for slicing. You're making a couple trays of scallop potatoes for your kids, and use that mandolin really careful, especially when you get towards the end. You don't want to slice off your fingertips. It's a great tool for efficiency. And then the top one is kind of like a French fry cutter. So you put the whole potato in there, clamp it down, and it cuts perfect French fry shapes. So there are always tools. If you're ever spending a ton of time doing something in your kitchen, think, maybe someone at one point invented something that eased this burden. And chances are there's a tool that's going to make it a little bit easier for you. All right. So types of potatoes. When we talk about types, I'm not talking about varieties. I'm talking about more like the texture. So the wide world of spuds is staggeringly diverse. Peru, which we learned is where potatoes are native to. Peru's International Potato Center has preserved close to 5,000 varieties. 5,000. But broadly speaking, your local grocery store is likely to have a few main types on offer, each suited to different preparations. We have our starchy, also known as mealy. Starchy potatoes, which include russet, Idaho, and many other varieties, are, as the descriptor says, high in starch. They're also low in moisture, fluffy, and absorbent, making them ideal for baking, frying, boiling, and mashing. Because the flesh flakes and separates easily after cooking, they do not hold their shape compared to a waxy. Next, we have waxy. In contrast to their starchy counterparts, waxy potatoes tend to have thinner, shinier skin and dense flesh that's moister and lower in starch. Red Bliss, New Potato, Fingerling, and a lot of the smaller varieties fit into this category. These hold their shape well when cooked and are therefore perfect for applications where that's a priority. Think potato salad, roasted potatoes, and good old-fashioned boiled and buttered potatoes. And then we have our all-purpose. So 2 words here. We think all-purpose, we think Yukon Gold. This storied variety and other starchy, waxy hybrids have been bred to be somewhere in the middle. The Goldilocks of the potato, they're not too crumbly, not too dense, and versatile enough to work in almost all preparations. Boil them, mash them, roast them, stir fry them, you name it, and these potatoes can do it. And oftentimes, you know, right in the bag, it'll say if they're starchy or they're all-purpose. You mostly see all-purpose just for that reason, because they can really be for anything. But keep an eye on that. You know, there's a potato for the recipe. And there's more. Having ready access to supermarket potatoes you know will perform as expected is a beautiful thing. But if you love potatoes as much as I do, you'd be missing out if you didn't play the field. Remember, there are 5,000 varieties. Maine farmers are growing a variety of heirloom potatoes you're less likely to find in stores, like some of the ones on the screen here that are sold by Wood Prairie Family Farm in Bridgewater, Maine. And if you're not sure how to prepare them, just ask whoever's selling them for their favorite method. I love this. So if you're gonna go, you know, you're on the phone with a farmer, you're at a farmer's market making that initial connection and say, you know, I really wanna do shepherd's pie for my kids. Like, what's a really great potato for mashing and then baking like that? And they're gonna know. The farmer is gonna know what they're growing and what it's best for. So definitely ask them. They're a great resource. All right. Is this potato good or is it bad? So do not eat if your potatoes are soft, squishy, or wrinkly, they're greenish in color on the outside or under the skin, and they're rotten or smelly. Give them the green light. So you're clear to prep, cook, and eat if your potatoes are firm when squeezed, normally colored, no greenish tint, and sprouted. So I'm gonna get a little bit into the green part and the sprouted part in a second. It's worth understanding a little bit more. So, why do potatoes sprout? Potatoes don't need dirt. Sometimes storage conditions inspire your spuds to start sprouting far from the ground. All they need is darkness and moisture, making your kitchen or pantry an ideal place to start growing eyes. And eyes are the little sprouts coming out of the potato. But these extra appendages don't mean you have to trash your taters. If they're still firm when you squeeze them, the potatoes can be eaten once you've removed the sprouts and cooked the potatoes. So I'm sure we've all been there before. I know I have been there maybe every single year. I never learned my lesson. It's springtime, I'm cleaning out my pantry. I reach back and I found a bag of potatoes and I opened it up and it's just these 1-inch long sprouts shooting out, and those potatoes are just ready to go in the ground. And so I have 2 options here. If they're still firm to the touch and they haven't greened, I can just chop off those sprouts and eat them. I can just throw them into the compost pile, forget about them, and then have some potatoes growing up in my compost pile over the summer. Or I can do, like this picture on the right here, I can cut them into chunks where each chunk has at least 1 sprout growing out of it, leave them be to dry, kind of crust up for a few days, and then this is an awesome activity to do with your students. Plant them in the garden. Maybe your school has some educational gardens outside, some raised beds. This is a fun activity, and it's kind of this wild idea for kids to understand how to grow potatoes, that you're essentially just putting a potato in the ground and you're getting a whole plant. That's really cool. But if you're going to try and use them in your kitchen, they're okay as long as they're just sprouting, they're still firm, and there's no green. However, what if your potatoes are green? And we probably have seen this too. So it sounds like a joke or perhaps just an urban legend, the grew out of Dr. Seuss's Green Eggs and Ham, but food scientists say this one is no myth. The reality is that green potatoes contain high levels of a toxin, solanine, which can cause nausea, headaches, and neurological problems. Potatoes naturally produce small amounts of solanine as a defense against insects, but the levels increase with prolonged exposure to light and warm temperatures. The green color is actually caused by high levels of chlorophyll, which by itself is harmless, but it is also a sign that levels of solanine, which is produced at the same time as chlorophyll, have increased as well. According to a recent study, a 100-pound person would have to eat about 16 ounces of a fully green potato to get sick. And that is the weight of a large baked potato. So they say fully green. So you cut into that potato and it's green all the way through. But 100-pound person, chances are you're feeding 100-pound people in your schools. That's a child size. And so feeding them green potatoes can make them sick. So the bottom line is green equals garbage. It is not worth it. So in your home kitchens, you might feel comfortable cutting out the green. Maybe it's just one small part is green, but the rest is nice and white and looks good. In your home kitchens, you can make that decision. In your school kitchens, just don't do it. If it's green, it goes in the compost. And that's just the rule. All right, how do we prevent our potatoes from going green or sprouting, going moldy, any of those things? I love this picture here. It's a great way to store potatoes. The key is to store potatoes in a cool, dry place, like in the cabinet of a pantry, in a paper bag, or a cardboard box. It's important to keep potatoes at cool, ideal temperature, but not in the fridge, to prevent them from turning green, getting soft spots, or prematurely sprouting. So the ideal temperature is between 45 and 55, which is a little chilly, but that might be like a root cellar or a dry goods storage area. Definitely out of direct sunlight, lots of good ventilation, and making sure that it's nice and cool and dry in there. And make sure that you don't ever wrap them in plastic. And this photo here, the top one, you can see that they're pretty tightly wrapped in plastic, and you might buy them wrapped in plastic, but you do not want to store them like that because they can't breathe. So as soon as you get them home, free them from that plastic and put them into a basket, a bowl, a paper bag, anything where there's air that can get to them, because they will go bad very quickly if they're kind of suffocated like that. You really want to make sure that there's good air circulation. I like the bag at the bottom here. That's kind of like a plastic netting, so there's tons of air getting into those guys, and you're good to go. Just store them right in those bags. Never store them in the refrigerator, and never store them near onions, bananas, or apples, because this kind of produce produces ethylene gas, which will cause the potatoes to ripen faster and to rot faster. So I know a lot of us, myself included, store our potatoes right next to our onions, and this is just going to significantly decrease their shelf life. So try and not do that. All right. So this pretty much concludes the educational part of this local foods training on potatoes. Now you're going to go online, you're going to check out our potato resources, our fact sheet with a couple of recipes, and then our new Harvest of the Month recipes. We've got a few videos in the works for you to watch where I'm actually preparing these dishes in our culinary classroom in Augusta, and I go over some basic knife skills. And then you're going to use these recipes in your own school kitchens. And please send me some photos of the finished dishes, some photos of you making them. And once you do all three of these steps, your school district will be eligible for that additional $500 of reimbursement with the local foods fund. And hopefully you end up with some really tasty potato recipes to offer to your children. So if you have any questions about anything that you learned here, any ideas for local foods trainings that you think would be helpful for your kitchen staff or other schools, please reach out. Please let me know. I'm always here to help connect you with farmers in your area, to answer your questions, to support you in any way with your farm and seed to school efforts in your schools. All right, thank you so much.